Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make oatmeal cookies, and this is what they look like. These cookies are soft and chewy and full of flavor. We have the rolled oats, we have some chopped nuts, I'm putting raisins, chocolate chips. They're so good. So the first thing you will need to do is preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 180 degrees Celsius. And then you will need a baking sheet, line that with parchment, or you could just like lightly butter it or spray it with one of the nonstick sprays. So for the batter, if you have a stand mixer, use your paddle attachment. You could use a hand mixer for this, or really you could just have a large bowl with a wooden spoon because you're just kind of mixing everything together for oatmeal cookies. The first thing we need is 3/4 of a cup, which is 170 grams of butter. Have your butter at room temperature. I'm using unsalted. You know, I prefer the flavor, and I also like to regulate the salt myself in a recipe. But if you have a favorite salted butter, you can use that. So I'm just going to put that in there. And I'm just going to beat that until it's nice and smooth. Okay. So next, and as always, you know, periodically scrape down the sides and bottom of your bowl. So we want to make sure everything gets mixed together. So the next thing we're going to add is 1 cup, which is 205 grams of light brown sugar. Now, if you're not weighing it, which you should weigh your ingredients, a little plug there for that. But if you're using a measuring cup, make sure when you put it in, you kind of pack the sugar down so you get a really full cup. So I'm going to put that in there. And I'm going to add 1 teaspoon, 4 grams of pure vanilla extract. It's just for flavoring, so if you want to leave out the vanilla flavor, you can. So now I'm going to mix this on medium-high speed. Really, I just want to mix everything together and maybe get a little bit of air, so maybe a minute or 2 minutes. So this is what you're looking for. Just everything mixed together, a little bit of air whipped in there. Next, we're going to add 1 large egg, and have your egg at room temperature. And a large egg is about 50 grams by weight. And then I'm also going to add 1 tablespoon of honey. Now you can use any mild flavor honey that you have in the house. And I mean, this is an optional ingredient. If you don't have honey, then, you know, you can leave it out or maybe use maple syrup. But it adds flavor, obviously, the flavor of the honey. But it also helps to make our oatmeal cookies nice and soft and moist. So I'm just going to beat that in. Okay, pretty simple. So now, for our dry ingredients, in a bowl I have 3/4 of a cup, which is 95 grams of all-purpose flour, or you may call it plain flour. And to that I'm going to add a 1/2 teaspoon, 2 grams of baking soda, and a 1/2 teaspoon, 2 grams of salt. So if you use salted butter, I would just leave out that salt. And for oatmeal cookies, I like a little bit of ground cinnamon. So a 1/2 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. Now, if you're a person that does not like cinnamon, you can just leave it out. But I like the combination, so I always add just a little. So I'm just gonna mix that together. And then we're just gonna beat that in on low speed. You don't want that flour coming up in your face. Okay, as you can see, really easy batter to make. I mean, you could just mix it by hand, but if you have a mixer, you might as well use it. So now, oatmeal cookies obviously need some rolled oats. We are going to add 3 cups, 260 grams. I'm using old-fashioned rolled oats. Now there's 2 types, the old-fashioned and then the quick cooking Really the difference is in the thickness of the oats. I actually like the old-fashioned because they're thicker, and then that'll give us a more chewy texture to our oatmeal cookies. Now you can find rolled oats on the cereal aisle of your grocery store, but now if you cannot find old-fashioned, or all you have in the house is quick cooking and you really want to make them, you can use that. And then lots of add-ins here. I'm adding 1 cup, 120 grams of chopped walnuts. You could use pecans, even probably hazelnuts, and just coarsely chop them. And if you do not want nuts in your oatmeal cookies, you can just leave that out. You don't have to change the recipe, just leave it out. And then I'm going to, these are loaded with stuff, I'm going to add a 1/2 cup, 75 grams of raisins. And if you don't want to use raisins, you know, dried cranberries, dried cherries, currants, really you could use, or a combination of that. And I'm also adding a 1/2 cup, 85 grams of chocolate chips, and I'm using dark chocolate chips and white. So again, you can use what I'm using or leave it all out or change it up the way you want. Now I'm just going to mix all this in gently, and then we're done. Okay. Now let's get that straight. I'm going to bake the cookies off right away. The good thing about this batter is you don't have to. You could bake some or bake none right now, and then just cover your batter, put it into the refrigerator, probably lasts 2 or 3 days. So sometimes what I'm going to, like today, I'm going to bake 1 pan, and then I'm going to refrigerate the rest of the batter, and then, you know, tomorrow if I want a nice freshly baked oatmeal cookie, I can do that. You could actually form the cookies and put them on a baking sheet, freeze them, and once they're frozen, put them in a bag, and then you can take them out of the freezer when you feel, you know, a month or so later, and bake them off. So there's some options here. Now, I like my oatmeal cookies large. You can make them any size you want. So I like them about 1/4 cup, that's 60 milliliters. So how do you form? You could take a measuring cup and do that. You could just take a round ball, you know, form it into a ball. You will need about 55 grams if you want to weigh, or if you have the handy ice cream scoop that's, you know, 1/4 cup, you can use that. 60 milliliters. Just some options there for you. And then I'm not, you know, these are big cookies. I'm only going to put about 6 on the baking sheet at once. The important thing when you're, you know, forming your cookies, whether you use an ice cream scoop, 2 spoons, or whatever, is you want to make all the cookies both the same size so they all bake, you know, the same length of time. You don't want big ones, small ones, and then, you know, one will be done and others not. So there you have your mounds, and then you can either lightly wet your hands, or you could even put some flour, just a little bit of flour, and then we want to flatten these out. Like so. They'll spread a little, so you want to give some room between the cookies. Okay, that looks pretty good. And I get them all flattened about the same thickness, because again, you want them to all bake in the same amount of time. So now, first, everyone's oven is a little different. I like my oatmeal cookies soft and chewy. So what you're looking for, I'm going to say 12 minutes, 12 to 14 minutes. And you want to rotate your baking sheet front to back about halfway through baking. But more importantly, what are you looking for? What you're looking for is the outside of the cookie will be golden brown. And if you touch it, you know, it's kind of firm. But the important thing is in the center, it's going to be still soft. Actually, it's going to be like a little wet looking. And a lot of times you may pull it out and go, doesn't look quite done. Should I give it another minute? Pull them out. You know, err on the side where you're kind of like, you know, maybe a little longer. No, if you want them really nice and soft and chewy. Of course, if you want them more firm, the longer you bake them, the more firm they will be. So you might want to do a test cookie, 1 or 2, and then you can kind of get your oven down and how long it will be. But I'm going to say about 12 minutes. Okay, so our oatmeal cookies are done. As you can see around the outside, they're done, but in the centers, if you can see, I'm pressing down, they're really soft, so that's what you're looking for. Now, we got to let these cool 3 maybe to 5 minutes. We don't want to remove them from the pan right now. They're really soft and they're fragile and they'll just fall apart. So maybe 5 minutes, and then use your spatula to transfer them over to the wire rack to finish cooling. And when we come back, we will try one. So now our oatmeal cookies are still a little warm, which is the way I like them. Now, just a little tip. I noticed when I was off camera that one of my oatmeal cookies, it kind of spread at the edges a little too thin. So there's a trick. You can kind of fix that. While they're still really hot, just take your spatula and then you can just go around the cookie and kind of neaten up those edges to make it look nice and round. And then they can finish cooling and no one will know the difference. So let's try one. They're still nice and warm, soft. Whoop. These oatmeal cookies are just full of flavor. They're buttery, because we use quite a bit of butter in them. But you have the chewiness of the rolled oats. And then, you know, a touch of cinnamon, which I always like in my oatmeal cookies. Then you get the raisins, the chocolate chips, the nuts. I mean, they're really packed with so many good things. And, you know, they're, of course, all cookies are great, freshly made. But I find, you know, you cover them and store them for a couple days. They will firm up, but they're still really, you know, quite soft and chewy. And what you can do is just pop them in the microwave just for a few seconds to warm them up if you want. So you have to try these. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com.